Let me ask you something. What if the mental maps we all use to navigate global business are, well, dangerously out of date? I mean, what if the world has changed so completely that our old theories are basically leading us right off a cliff? We need to talk about this because a huge debate is raging right now over the new rules for success.
And this, right here, is the central problem. It's perfect. We're trying to figure out how to operate in 2026, but so many businesses are still using maps drawn up in the 1990s. Think about it. Those classic theories were built for a world of physical factories and stable supply chains. But today, we live in a world of sovereign AI and data assets. The old maps, they just don't work anymore. They're leading us completely astray.
So, first up, let's really dig into why these classic theories are failing so hard in today's global landscape. Now, this gives you a picture of the new world we're in. We're talking about a projected $35 trillion in global trade. But the real story is how that trade is changing. You see this huge rise in South-South trade flows. That's trade between developable nations. And then you have these new ideas like sovereign AI, where countries are pouring billions into building their own tech. This is all part of a bigger trend called geopatriation, which is a fancy way of saying countries are pulling their critical digital supply chains back home. Believe me, this is not the world of the 90s. Okay, so this table lays out exactly where the old thinking just completely breaks down. Porter's model, it assumed that a country's advantages were pretty much fixed. Well, that's obsolete now that countries can literally build new advantages with sovereign AI. The old build versus buy choice, gone, replaced by this new world of platforms. And this idea that gaps in a country's institutions are just problems to be fixed, well, that's about to be turned completely on its head. The takeaway here is simple. The very foundation of our old maps is cracked. And this failure has sparked this really ambitious attempt to draw a completely new map for this new world. It's called the Digital Sovereignty Governance Theory, or DSGT for short. The core idea behind DSGT is that we've gone through this massive fundamental shift. We've moved from an industrial era where value came from physical things like factories and free trade was the ultimate goal, to what they call a digital sovereign era. In this new world, the real assets are data, and the rules of the game are being fragmented by every country's own national digital strategy. So how do you actually win in this new era? Well, according to DSGT, it's this incredibly delicate balancing act. Success isn't about just one thing anymore. It's about the perfect geometric alignment of three massive forces: your company's own digital skills, the host country's goals for its own digital future, and on top of all that, your geopolitical legitimacy. Get that alignment right, you win. Get it wrong, you fail. Simple as that. And here's where it gets really interesting. This is one of DSGT's most fascinating and kind of counterintuitive ideas, the paradox of institutional voids. The old thinking was pretty simple. Weak institutions are bad for business, period. But DSGT says, hold on, it's more complicated. Take a look at this curve. It suggests that there's actually a sweet spot. A moderate level of institutional voids can actually be the most profitable place to be because it creates space for innovation where the old rules just don't apply. And that brings us to another huge piece of this puzzle. Business is now geopolitical. It's not just some background noise anymore. Your strategy has to account for things like friendshoring, which means aligning your operations with politically friendly countries. And you have to navigate these brand new risks like data expropriation. That's when a country's laws can effectively seize your most valuable asset, your data, by forcing you to store it locally. So, to sum it all up, the DSGT framework offers this really powerful, all-encompassing vision. It's basically arguing that the old logic of just being economically efficient is dead. To succeed in 2026, you need this complex, geometric alignment of technology, national interest, and global politics. It's an incredibly elegant theory, right? It seems to capture all the complexity of the world we're living in. But here's the million-dollar question. Is it actually correct? Because, as you might have guessed, there is a powerful counter-argument out there. A second theory that challenges the very foundation of DSGT, and it accuses it of a really fatal flaw, something called digital determinism. So this challenger theory is called Strategic Resource Positioning Theory, or SRPT. And its first big attack is right here. It says DSGT is just way too complicated. Look at this. A good theory is supposed to be simple, elegant. So why, they ask, do you need 35 different propositions to explain the world when SRPT can do a better job with just 8? And this is where the two theories go head to head.
Remember that DSGT's sweet spot for institutional voids? Well, SRPT says that's a dangerous illusion. Their view is way simpler. Voids are always costly. Period. Better institutions always lead to better performance. And they didn't just guess. They did a meta-analysis of 127 different studies and found zero empirical evidence for DSGT's little U-shaped curve. None.
And then they drop the bombshell. Remember how DSGT put geopolitics right at the center of everything? Well, SRPT went and analyzed over 50,000 foreign direct investment deals, and they found that 92% of them involved absolutely no geopolitical screening whatsoever. For the vast majority of actual business happening, SRPT argues, geopolitics is basically a rounding error.
Okay, so what about being trapped by digital platforms? SRP calls this the platform dependency myth, and the data seems to back them up. Sellers aren't locked in at all. The huge majority, 73%, use multiple platforms. Switching isn't that hard. And the best companies? They're actively building their own channels to become less dependent. The platforms are just a tool, not your master.
So what's the SRPT alternative? Well, it's a powerful call to get back to basics. It claims that, look, despite all this noise about digital transformation and geopolitics, success is still driven by the stuff that has always mattered: your tangible resources, how well you run your operations, your position in the market, and your brand, the fundamentals. And here is SRPT's knockout punch, all in a single chart. When you actually analyze what drives performance, those traditional factors, a company's resources and position, they account for a massive 68% of the difference between success and failure. And all those new factors from DSGT, digital capabilities, just 4%. Geopolitical alignment, a tiny 2%. The message here is crystal clear. The old rules haven't been replaced at all.
Okay. Wow. So we've got these two powerful competing theories basically slugging it out. What on earth does this high-level debate actually mean for your strategic playbook? So, who's right? Is it the tech visionary with their complex new map of digital sovereignty and geopolitics? Or is it the traditional realist who's arguing that at the end of the day, the fundamentals always win?
Well, here's the thing. The key takeaway isn't about picking a winner. The real strategic advantage, the real new map, comes from living in the tension between these two views. It means you absolutely have to focus on your fundamental resources, just like SRPT says. But you also have to use the DSGT lens to see this new landscape of digital rules and politics. It's about managing this dual legitimacy, balancing your home country's rules with your host country's demands. It's about seeing all these fragmented regulations not as a headache, but maybe, just maybe, as an opportunity. This synthesis, that's the new strategic map. Which brings us right back to where we started, but with a whole new sense of urgency. I want you to look at your own strategy. Are you asking the right questions for the world we live in right now? Or are you still trying to navigate the complex, shifting terrain of 2026 with a map from 1990?